This is my official review of the Maschine Plus standalone drum sampler.
Traptendo.
What is going on, guys? Official review. I'm gonna weigh in with my pros and cons because that is what a review is about. This is not an overview or a tutorial on how to use it. Separate videos will be coming for this, and I want to explain that to you guys in as much detail as humanly possible without going on and on and on and on and on. So let's get to it. The time stretch. How is it? So we got to start this video off with the time stretch test here. So I have a project that I already have showed on the live stream, and I'm going to let you hear it real quick. It's using an audio track right here selected over here. I have many other stuff that's going on in here, but importantly, it has a loop in here. If you're a loop-based producer, you're going to flip. So let's go ahead and hear it. Yeah, crazy. We're at 8 BPM, 3 BPM, 74, 138, 193. Very good. I would say that the time stretch in this is actually better than what you would get in the computer. Yeah, you might have to experience it for yourself, but for me, I already know what the deal is. Way better than FL Studio, and darn near as good as Ableton Live and Serato. Yes, Serato. Some of the key elements that I want to focus on right now is definitely the build quality. The build quality on this is A1. I would say that they switched over to aluminum body, and the encoders themselves are military grade. I really like them, and the way that they're aligned are pretty good. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of people will get used to this, especially this 4D encoder right here. It just gives me good feelings, good vibes when using this standalone, and it's not too overbearing as well. The other thing that I'm shocked about is that I really don't think that this needs a touchscreen. I mean, at the price of $1,400, the build quality is good, and the OLED screen is probably the most expensive part. And if they change this area just for it to be a touchscreen, yeah, I think that might piss off a couple of Native Instruments fanboys. I would be pissed if I was a Native Instruments fanboy from the beginning. It just would knock everything out of flow, and this thing has a pretty decent flow about it. Let's go ahead and talk about the IOs. So let's start with the headphone volume being right here, and I'm actually happy that they have a headphone volume that is separate from the line out volume, but at the same time the location I do not like. But with Native Instruments, I will give them credit with the 4D encoder that they provide on this. It does have a button where you can control the volume, so that's actually pretty good. So you do have your line out volume knob right here, and then you have your line out left and right here. That's pretty standard. And then you have your input gain mic in, which is 1/4 inch as well as all of these are, and line in 1, line in 2, and then you have MIDI out, MIDI in, full size 5-pin DIN. That is dope, but I really wish that they would have an extra 2 like other units that are in this price point. They do have a pedal expansion right here, and I think that's really cool that you could do that with your 1/4 inch, of course. USB to B to type A, of course, that's pretty standard, but it's 2.0 instead of 3.1. Then you have where your power supply goes in, and it does lock in. I don't know why they chose to do that, but it's pretty good just in case you're very clumsy. Pretty much like Apple stuff, of course, back in the day with the MacBook Pro 2015. And they have a USB hub, which you can, and I have to give them credit. At the same time, it's more of a cash grab too at that, but at least you can still buy one of their complete audio interfaces and be able to expand your IO natively, and that's really good. So now that we got that out the way, let's go to the overhead view, and I'm gonna weigh in with my pros and cons for real. So here we are, top down view. I'm gonna go ahead and hit that power button We're gonna see how long it takes for it to load up and stuff like that. So I'm taking about 7 seconds off and see how long it takes. I have had one crash, and that was when, and I remind everybody, please update your firmware as soon as you get this unit, if you are thinking about getting this unit, because the firmware that it comes with is not up to snuff yet. So I got this day one. I did spend my own money. It turned on, and it was about 30 seconds, and I think that's pretty good. I'll say about 27 seconds. It's pretty good. So when I want to go in here and just go and go to browser, and I'm going to go over here to user and stuff like that. One thing I do want to say is whatever you stopped last, it will save all of those options and stuff like that on shutdown. So if you do anything as far as your settings, yeah, you don't have to worry about a lot of stuff. So you have all your stuff in the browser. You have your projects, groups, sounds, instruments, and you do have those classic Native Instruments plugins, of course, with their limitations, mind you, since it's a standalone, and that's understandable. But you have FM8 Contact, Maschine, Massive, Monarch, Prism, Reactor, and Retro Machines, all in standalone, and that's really dope. One of the things I really like about this is that seeing that I'm in pad mode right now, and I'll talk more about how the pads feel in a second, I can load in this sound right here, go to another pad, and then go, maybe I want to do contact this time, and pull out a sound here, and just load that in there, and you can construct a drum / keyboard and have it the way you want in pad mode. And if I had this one sound over here and I just go out of the browser, I can go into the keyboard, play it chromatically, and these pads do feel good. I think they're very sensitive. They're very, very sensitive, and you can control the sensitivity if you go into your settings. A little bit more about that in a second here, and that's one thing I really do like about it. As far as CPU goes, I haven't experienced any crazy CPU overloads unless I load something like an NI expansion, a group or something like that, and it might be up to about 68% loading per group in there, up to about a max of 3, and then it will be pretty bad. But as far as it goes, though, I don't think a lot of people understand that it's still a technological advance for it to run on its own OS. And with that being said, they can fine-tune the CPU at any given time during each and every update. I experienced that with the MPC line too as well. So it's not like they can't do it, and I'm pretty sure they're going to work on that. What I want to do here is go into the browser. I'm going to load up a project here. I'm going to go over here to projects, go to user, and then we're going to load up something Jungtendo, and we're going to discard everything, and we're going to load it. We're going to see, you know, if it has any issues or anything like that while I'm recording live. Sometimes, you know, it does take a long time for stuff to load, mind you. And yeah, as you can see, it's taking a hot second, and I didn't do much to this project either. So it just crashed and went to the machine. This is what it happens when it crashes from trying to load a project up. So if you load it up in the browser, it will crash for any of your tracks. I think that's one of the bugs that I just found for this. So I'm gonna wait for a little bit, and then we're gonna do it the right way. Oh, okay, well, it's already up, so I'm gonna go into file over here, and I'm gonna load up the proper way here. Nintendo. It does work sometimes when you load up your projects that way. And now I'm just gonna load it up this way and see if it works. So let's hear some beats. So the things that I want to talk about that kind of are my gripes for the workflow is things like, why doesn't it have, since it has over 50 buttons on there, a dedicated time correction button? Yes, I know there's a quantize over here, which you will reach with shift and quantize, and quantize 50%, but why not its own quantize button? That is a very important button to have, but you set your quantize by hitting shift and then grid over here. Why? And then you would have to go into step, and then you set it up that way, and oh my gosh, like, and you have different things that you would have to set up as far as the grid, and that could be problematic. And then also, if you don't know, you have to pin stuff. So, you know, that's a lot of functionality there. See there, I'm using 2 hens, and yeah, that's one of my gripes about this, as well as setting up stuff like your song mode. If you go over here and you press shift and you go into song mode or whatnot, and if you don't work with clips and you work with patterns, yes, you can set it up to where you can convert the patterns after you create them and turn them into clips. But why is that something that you have to do? And then that just brings me into a paradigm of where I would like to say to Native Instruments, when you launch a Maschine, launch it with tutorials on your official channel, and then allow the echo chambers to go with your influencers or whatever, so they can start teaching this stuff. Otherwise, it just makes no sense to people and will turn people off if you don't understand it. Yes, one thing I do want to applaud you guys on is you have a manual day one for the Maschine Plus. My saving grace. But not everybody reads manuals, obviously. However, I do want to praise them for having this clip mode, because this makes more sense for when you want to lay out stuff and have a linear timeline. And they have it in the standalone unit. And not many standalone units have it yet. So I have another project loaded up here, and it should be my sample joint. Hey. So now that we have that in here, I'm just gonna go ahead and show you, basically I did chop the sample up, and I used the pad mode over here. You can see where I had the sample chopped up, and it was just right into the sampler here. And it has some pretty good functionality to it as far as like editing and then slicing and stuff like that. You have the truncate, normalize, reverse, fade in, fade out. You have all the things that you would expect for a sampler to do when you have sample-based stuff. And yeah, you have your manual mode. You also have your grid here. So you have something more or less of the MPC 2500, which this reminds me of the 2500 in certain ways when it comes to things like if you had to go and edit MIDI and stuff like that. Of course, you would go into event mode. And this is where you will see it really doesn't need a screen that is a touch screen for many different reasons here, because as long as you understand what's going on as far as the event mode, you can select different things. Like I could just go and select a certain part here and just hit the button, and whatever is to the color here. So if I wanted to move this over or do this or move that over or move this over, I would just select it and then go into the event here and just move it in position and whatever. So it's easy to do, and I'll get more into that into a tutorial. I just want to show that you don't necessarily need that. And then when you go into naming files and stuff like that, like if I want to save as or something, and I want to go in here, save as, and then I want to name stuff, you have backspace, you have the buttons to go for the functionality here, and you can just use your encoder and just scrolling left and right. Very classic, reminds me of the MPC 2500 again, or the MPCs of old, even though this is the Maschine we're talking about. And you don't really need the touch screen. Like it really would hurt the functionality or the workflow nonetheless. And I would be pissed if I was a fanboy. The pads feel really good too when drumming. Yes, good. Very, very sensitive. So tell me how you feel about this video. Again, I definitely want to hear from you guys in the comment section. I mean, I definitely want to hear your hot takes as well as I'm going to weigh in with mine. So I'm going to start with the pros. Well, the workflow is pretty good. I mean, it could be thrown in the air. I mean, it's a toss-up. Let's be real. Like, people are going to prefer a certain kind of workflow, and the Maschine workflow right now in standalone is true to its Mark III. predecessor, and yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be happy. I think Native Instruments delivered on that, and those are the things that I really do like that they did. They stuck with their guns as far as the workflow. It looks beautiful. It's not too heavy. It's well built. It doesn't feel cheap at all, guys. I mean, $1,400, it better not feel cheap. And yeah, I think those are the things that I would say are really good about it. Again, the other thing that I want to talk about is the time stretch. I mean, built-in time stretch on a quad-core processor with 4 gigs of RAM, and it's outperforming stuff like Ableton Live and Serato. Bruh, that is really bringing up the value for this system. I mean, a lot of people like loop-based production. They just like to throw loops in there and do a little bit of a drum line, manipulate it, half-time it, and all that stuff. And those are the things that you can do very well. And it sounds really good when you stretch it up and down.
Now, let's talk about the cons.
Well, it's a mixed bag for me. One thing I would say is, even with the Mark III, I felt like the workflow was a little bit convoluted. And when I say that, if you look at this, it has a lot of buttons on here. And there's a lot of shift this, shift that, shift this, shift button there. There's like 3 button combinations that you have to press to get to certain options, and those are things that you really would need to do. And then just the fact that you have things like patterns, clips, scenes, it's like, why not just go with the clips, you know? I know they're not going to change that, and there's certain people that like the workflow, and I do know how to convert patterns into clips, so we'll get to that in another video, but those are things that I wanted to be picky about. The touchscreen, not so much of a big deal that it doesn't have a touchscreen. Having a battery, not so much of a big deal either, because yeah, like I don't see the point of having a battery on a machine like this and it doesn't have a portable speaker of any type. I know you can get a portable speaker and, you know, do your thing out in the desert or by your pool or whatever if you are into stuff like that, but you know, it really doesn't hurt it. And we're talking about the cons here. But my other cons would probably be like resampling. The sampling is actually pretty good, but resampling isn't hard to do. But, you know, it could be a whole lot easier. I would reference other machines, but I'm going to keep it about this review right here. And I do think that is one of the things, but the biggest elephant in the room is definitely the price point. At $1,400, not a lot of people are going to have this, and not a lot of people are going to have it right now because of specific things that are happening that if I say something about it, my video will get demonetized. You know what I'm talking about? Do I give this the stamp of approval? I would like to say I would give it maybe a 95% if it wasn't for the price point, so I would take it down to 75%. But it's definitely worth checking out if you want to get into a standalone unit.